All right, sorry for that delay. We're live now. Thanks.
Okay, I think we're good to go then. So thank you. We'll begin with roll call.
All right. Regent Johnson,
Present.
Regent Amor,
Present.
Regent Mendoza,
She's absent.
okay, thank you. And then presenter Sam Christie Dangermond.
Here.
All right, presenter Jen Bonzraki,
Present.
presenter Claire Nickerson,
Here.
presenter Missy Knox,
Here.
and presenter Rusty Monholland.
Here.
All right, and that concludes roll.
Thank you so much. All right, so we have well, first we need to approve minutes. So I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes from the November 4th, 2025 meeting.
So moved.
And I can second that.
Okay.
Any discussion? Okay. All in favor of approving the minutes, say aye. Aye. Excuse us, it's a little odd with just two of us. We kind of have to go back and forth. We have nothing on consent items, and so I think we'll go ahead and move to the board discussion agenda items. So Director Christie Dangermond, if you want to go ahead and talk to us about the performance reports.
You bet. Thank you, Regent Johnston. So this item begins on page 5 of your agendas. And as you all know, state statute authorizes the Kansas Board of Regents to approve performance agreements for the state's public post-secondary institutions and to determine the amount of any new state funds they should receive because of those agreements. In May of 2023, the board approved a new project-based system for reporting years 2024 through 2026. The performance funding framework centers on institutions applying 4 proven practices that support progress on the board's Building a Future strategic plan. These practices include math pathways, co-requisite support to replace traditional prerequisite developmental education, system-wide course placement measures for math and English gateway courses, and academic degree maps. The academic year 2025 performance reports outline activities for academic year 2026, focusing on the soft implementation of the 4 proven practices that I just mentioned. And this is a soft implementation because full implementation is not expected until next year. So as noted in the reports for Indicator 1, which is Math Pathways, institutions submitted links to enrollment information indicating they will offer at least one section of each gateway math course identified for Math Pathways and that apply to programs on their campus for both fall and spring semesters of this year. They also estimated enrollments for these courses for next year. For Indicators 2 and 3, institutions submitted links to enrollment information indicating they will offer at least one section of co-requisite support for Math and English Gateway courses, also for both semesters. And they also projected the number of course sections and expected student enrollments for these courses for next year. For Indicator 4, institutions reported the placement measures they use for Math and English Gateway courses, and they specified whether they would fully implement the approved system-wide measures this year or if they would phase them in with full adoption next year. The final component of these reports was the updating of the academic degree maps for all certificate and degree programs, linked from a single landing page on each institution's website. Additionally, this year, degree maps were to include the system-wide general education coding for community colleges and universities for programs utilizing the system-wide gen ed framework. Just a quick minute about the process for submitting the reports. Institutions were sent the report template and a scoring rubric this past March, and they were asked to fill those out and fill out the report templates, submit those to us by July 1st. As institutions submitted their reports, Staff provided a preliminary review and shared any concerns with the institution directly. This typically resulted in some updates to the reports and a resubmission. So consistent with the board's performance funding guidelines and with the rubric that immediately follows this report in attachment A, staff recommends that all 32 institutions receive 100% of any new funding available. That concludes my remarks. Happy to stand for questions.
Any questions? Thank you. I appreciate all the work that you and your staff have put in on this, as well, of course, as the work for the institutions. I think hopefully the performance reports as we move forward, they've changed a lot, as we know, over the years. And I think this is probably more reflective of what we want in terms of what we're getting in terms of data and making sure that these things are being implemented, math pathways, etc., campuses. And it's pretty much all institutions have the degree maps completed now.
Oh, yes. Yeah, they had those done last year for the most part. Not everybody had used the system-wide gen ed coding last year because we had given them that year grace period to do that, but they are all doing that this year.
Okay, thank you. I think that was the better point to my question was, is it actually tied to the system-wide coding? So excellent. Thank you to everybody for working on that. I know it was a heavy lift for everybody. So great though for students, I think, and it really gives us some consistency and an easier ability to transfer from institution to institution. So do I assume we need a motion to accept or not to accept a report, but to do the full funding for all institutions?
I think that the motion would be just to place it on the board discussion agenda for a future board meeting.
Okay. All right.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor? Aye. Okay. Thank you. And next up, we have the Open Educational Resources Annual Report. And so I believe Claire Dickerson and Jennifer Bontraki. Don't know.
Yeah, thank you so much, Regent Johnston. This item is on page 14 of your agenda. It's my pleasure to introduce Claire Nickerson. Claire represents our OER committee, and she's also a member of the FHSU community. So I'm excited for you to hear from her today about this annual report on the committee's important work for our institutions. Claire.
Thank you. All right, so I'm going to give you all a brief overview and then I'll chop into the report. So as Jen said, I am representing Open Up Learning Kansas, which is the KBOR OER committee. We just conducted our annual data report. So if you're unfamiliar with OERs are free course materials that are openly licensed. We recognize that students will not buy textbooks if they're too expensive, even if they recognize that not having course materials negatively affects their success. That's essentially what the introduction to the report says. But switching to OER improves retention and persistence with the same or better outcomes, particularly for minority students. So a little bit about the methods for the survey. We have sent this annually since 2021, so this is the 5th report and the 5th survey. The survey is sent to the CAOs of all of the KBOR institutions, and then they send them to the most appropriate person at their institution to fill it out, someone who's familiar with their OER initiatives. So I'm just going to give you all a brief overview of the highlights. I'm going to share my screen here. Okay, here we are. So 26 of the 33 respondents, which includes all KBOR institutions, indicated that their institution had a program committee or policy related to OER. That is a big increase from last year, when only 17 institutions reported that they had an OER program committee or policy. And if you were wondering, where is my institution at? There is a summary here on the second page of the report, starting with universities, There are links to the OER programs, a list of membership organizations related to OER that the institution reported being a part of. And then the following page has community colleges and then technical colleges. So all of our universities reported that they had a committee, program, or policy. Most of our community colleges and a few of our technical colleges, maybe we will have even more next year. So unit involvement in OER initiatives, I'm just going to cover this very briefly. Libraries were the most involved in OER initiatives, followed by academic departments and administrations. There is a lot more room for centers for teaching and learning and for student organizations to be involved in OER. So those are folks that you might want to reach out to. The most common OER practice in place that institutions reported was offering professional development related to OER, followed by providing instructional design support. And then here are some of the other practices that folks are engaging in, having an OER committee, collecting savings data, marking courses that use zero-cost course materials or OERs in the course catalog or registration system, having a recognition program for folks who are using OER, OER and promotion and tenure, OER policy, publishing programs. Z degree is where all of the courses within a degree use zero-cost course materials, and having a student government policy. We only had one in development. So stakeholder awareness of OER has increased since last year. It is higher among the library and administrators than in some other areas of campus. Now, I did say that professional development was the most common practice reported among campuses for OER. However, it was also the most requested type of support for OER. So even though a lot of institutions are getting professional development on OER at an institutional level, there are a number of institutions that are not. If your institution is one of those and you would like to develop some expertise on your campus, please do reach out to Open Up Learning Kansas. You can reach out to me or you can reach out to the committee chairs. We would be happy to connect you with a trainer to visit in person or virtually to provide whatever type of OER related professional development you need, whether that is just what are OERs, where to find them, how to adopt them, all the way up to we want to write our own. We're happy to provide that. That support is available. Other support that was desired for OER was support for publishing OER. If you are not aware, we do have a consortial membership to LibreTexts, which is an OER publishing platform. So ask your representative about that. Utilization of OER has also increased since last year. You can see our largest category of faculty using OER as a primary resource in at least one class is 6 to 10%. You might notice that 11 to 20% is not on this chart. That is because no institutions reported that 11 to 20% of their faculty. So we have below 10% or we have above 20%. That's what we have currently. We also asked about the percentage of faculty using OER, the percentage of system-wide transfer courses using OER as a primary resource. That has also increased since last year. So some of the biggest challenges to adopting OER, lack of faculty time topped the list, and this was also high on the list in previous years. So if you have funding available, perhaps to offer leave time or release time for faculty to switch to zero-cost course materials, that would be very effective in increasing adoption. Lack of existing OER for certain topics is a little bit harder to address, but as I said, we do have access to LibreTexts if you have faculty who are interested in authoring open textbooks if there's nothing in their fields. Faculty resistance and misconceptions about OER and lack of training can be addressed with professional development, which, as I said, we have available. And then here are some of the other challenges: lack of financial incentives, lack of interest, ease of using traditionally published resources, and a few other challenges. We did also ask about applying for or receiving grants related to OER. Just for your knowledge, there are not a lot of institution level grants available for OER. Most of the grants related to OER are at a consortial or state level, and Kansas is just not large enough to receive those without maybe partnering with other states. But here are some of the other barriers that were listed. And then I have here the references. So that is a very brief overview. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and ask if there are any questions.
I just have a question about this. Just working on my learning curve. Are most of these OERs for like 100, 200 level before you get into like a nursing handbook or a chemistry book? I mean, are we looking at more coursework that would be entry level or first year or second year as a student?
That used to be the case, that the majority of the OERs available, especially at the textbook level, were at that introductory level. However, in the last 5 years, there's been really a proliferation of OER related to more discipline-specific topics. So if you have not looked recently at what is available, there's a lot more than there used to be.
Thank you. I did have one quick question. You said that in some of the institutions, if OER is used for the course, it's listed in the catalog. Do any of the institutions list whether the course or whether that course section is OER in the course schedule?
Yes, I believe.
Consistency.
Yes, I believe many of them do. So in terms of OER practices in place, 10 of our institutions said that that was in place, and 3 of them said that that was in development. And there is a push at the national level to standardize practices for course marking. There's an organization called Doers that KBOR is a member of that's driving OER for student success and sustainability. They are working on guidelines for course marking nationally. And so it is my hope that once those guidelines are available, we'll be able to push those out and more institutions will look at adopting that practice.
Thank you. I think that's important. So that's interesting. It really looks like we're moving forward with OER, which I think really is a critical thing for students, especially as we look at cost and just the availability of OER, which has really, I think, gone up in terms of what's available in the last few years. So thank you all for your work on this, because I think it's important. So, thank you so much. Any other questions? All right.
Regent Johnston, this is Jill Arnsdorf from Fort Hays. I couldn't find how to raise my hand in the Zoom. Can I ask you a question?
Of course, I'm sorry.
Sure, no problem. I'm wondering, and maybe this happens already, but does this presentation, is it given anywhere else? Like for instance, with the student government faculty, or I'm sorry, the student government presidents or the faculty senate presidents. I know some of them sit in on these meetings, but I'm wondering if there might be some benefit to making sure that those two groups receive this report, whether that's in written form or with a small presentation. That might be helpful.
Yeah, thanks so much for that suggestion. As you indicated, we do have an assigned SAC member who joins, but I will be sure for that committee to share the full report. And of course, Sam's on the call and works with our faculty senate president, so I know she can ensure they receive the info too.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think that's a great idea, because that way, yeah, just to disseminate the information. Yeah, good point. Excellent. All right, so I believe next up is the applied free days update. And Misty, is that Misty Knox or Jenna, is it Misty Knox, I think, going to do this one?
Yeah, hey, Regent Johnston, it's Misty
well,
Knox. I will provide the Apply Free Days report for y'all today. Happy to be here. So I want to extend my appreciation to the DRP team. Our Data Research and Planning team has spent a while compiling this, preparing for this report. So thank you to them for gathering that. And then also institutions who were obviously a big part in gathering this information for us to better understand these Apply Free Days. As a note, this update was shared with the Apply Kansas Steering Committee, which includes statewide school counselors as well as college representatives. It was also shared with the Apply Free Days Committee, which is composed of our public universities admissions directors. And there was a student advisory committee representative who was present at that meeting as well and has expressed their support of this initiative. As a reminder, this initiative was modeled after Colorado's free application days. We're now in the third year of this pilot. During the 3-day window, all public institutions in Kansas, along with private institutions, have chosen to participate. They are waiving their undergraduate application fees for students who apply during this 3-day window. Previous reports, as well as today's report, will be available on the kansasregents.gov website /students under the Apply Free Days page. Let's start with a quick look at the national landscape. There's 23 states who offer some form of free college application initiative, but these programs really differ greatly in how they're structured and who oversees the free application efforts. So in many states, the effort is not coordinated solely by the state higher ed agency, meaning participation data, their collection by those individual institutions. Sometimes they're not reported at that state system level. So data from states has been requested, and no data beyond just those application totals and submissions have been provided thus far. The duration, as you can see here, of these initiatives also varies. Some states run, the 3-day event, such as Colorado, and then others extend them to a week or even a full month. Again, making those comparisons a little difficult when we look across other states. Kansas is one of the few states where all 32 public institutions are under that higher ed agency and participate in the single unified initiative. So the statewide coordination certainly makes Kansas a unique and consistent state to evaluate. So this map illustrates what we just saw on the previous slide, just the national landscape of statewide free college application initiatives. On the bottom right, you can see there a key showing the darker color states. Those are the longer free application initiatives, to the yellow being the 3-day initiatives. So we see Kansas and Colorado in the 3-day, and then it gets darker as the number of days, weeks, months, or year-round initiative is provided within that state. Here's a current snapshot of the application fees across Kansas public institutions. At this time, 4 universities and 2 technical colleges charge application fees. As a quick note, Emporia State University eliminated its application fee in 2024. However, the data presented today is going to reflect the period when Emporia State University did charge a $30 application fee. So just a note as we continue through the presentation today. Last year, we provided aggregate data. As mentioned, that's on the kansasregents.gov website, available to view. Today's presentation, however, is going to include unit record collection data. So this is a KEDS AY academic year collection data, providing more detailed insight into student level outcomes. As a means also to provide some depth and voice to the numbers that we see, I was able to conduct some independent research, and I'll be able to provide some preliminary findings with y'all today. So the enrollment terms are associated again with the 2023 Apply Free Days. So reading, from left to right, the visual shows when the Apply Free Days occurred. It was November 7th through the 9th, 2023, and when those students would have enrolled. So they could have enrolled summer 2024, fall 2024, and then spring 2025. So the data presented today reflects academic year 2025 cohort. Here we see the dollar amounts institutions told us they waived for the Apply Free Days initiative. So we can see this as the amount saved by our Kansas families due to this initiative. During that Apply Free Days window, there was about $285,000 saved through applications at the state universities. And then for technical colleges, it was about $11,000 saved by our Kansas families. Here we're looking at how many students submitted 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 or more applications. So just really understanding that duplication or the multiple applications that are submitted by students. The far left column shows the number of applications submitted per student. Then the table breaks down those counts into 2 groups. Those 2 groups are students' submissions during that Apply Free Days window, and then students who submitted applications outside of that 3-day window. So for each group, you can see the number of students submitting the respective number of applications and the percentage of the total of those windows. So for example, 75.8% of students submitted 1 application during those Apply Free Days. Then you can see 14.8% of those applications submitted during the Apply Free, those students submitted 2 applications. Now looking over at the columns that exclude the Apply Free Days applications, you can see 89.6 students just submitted 1 application during the period outside of that 3-day window. And then 8.6% of those students submitted 2 applications, and so on. So this just provides clear evidence, as we know, that there is duplicate applications being submitted. Removing that application fee really encourages students to not only apply, but also apply to more institutions. So they're expanding their post-secondary options during these 3 days due to that removal of the application fee. We'll now look at the yields of applications submitted during the free application days for academic year 2025 enrollment terms. So these are students who apply, then end up enrolling at that respective institution, hence the yield. You'll see these yields side by side with other application periods on the next slide, but first focusing here on the far left, each sector of public institution is listed. Moving across the slide displays the total number of applications submitted during that 3-day window, the number that were admitted, and then the number that ended up enrolling. The highest yield of applications submitted during the 3 days was actually reported, you can see there, by the municipal university, which is Washburn, at 59.8%. And then within our state universities, K-State actually saw a high yield at 39.8% for the Apply Free Days. Then moving down to technical institutions, just want to highlight a few of those. Flint Hills Technical College saw a 100% yield. Washburn Tech saw an 86% yield. And then Fort Hays Tech Northwest actually saw a 75% yield. So looking at institutions individually, overall, 39% of our public institutions reported higher yields for this 3-day window compared to those who students who submitted outside of that window. So for 39% of our institutions, that yield was higher in the Apply Free Days. So now we've seen the yield during the 3-day Apply Free Days. This yield brings the comparison into focus. So here you see the Apply Free Days yield side by side with the yield of applications submitted outside of that 3-day window. And then you can see on the far right the overall yield. So across all public institutions, the total yield for the application submitted during the Apply Free Days, the very bottom here, is 30.5%. Applications submitted outside of the 3-day window was 41.7%. And then for all applications, as you can see, 40.1%. But I just want to point out when we compare the apply free days with the yield excluding those apply free days applications, we're looking at about 11% lower yield. So we've disaggregated this data by the age of students at the time they submitted their application for admission. So during the free application days, we actually had 104 applications submitted by students under the age of 18. So these students, as you can see here, yielded at a 43.9%. Then moving across the road, you can see how that compares to submissions excluding the apply free days and then the overall. I really want to focus here on the apply free days applications and excluding the apply free days applications for a point of comparison. So now you can see the age 18 to 19. There was 9,388 applications submitted by students of that age group. Those students yielded at a 25.2%. This shows again how it compares with those submissions by that age group outside of the apply free days, so a little bit higher there, about 10%. Then just a note here for the 20 plus age ranges, this shows we're reaching some adult population. So students aged 20 to 24, these could be transfer students, so they could have taken a gap year, a few years before returning to college. But what we see here is that students aged 20 to 24, they made up about 1,241 of those applications during the free application days, and they yielded at a higher rate when we compare that to those submissions outside of that 3-day window. You'll also notice for the 25 plus and unknown age groups reported there, these students also had a higher yield during the free application days than those submissions outside of that window. So let's take a look at the impact on some of our underserved populations, beginning first with our first generation status students. Students who identified as first generation yielded at a higher rate, 32.8%, compared to their non-first generation peers who applied during that free application window, which was 29.6%. So comparably, first generation, 32.8%, to their non-first generation peers, 29.6%. Here we see the yield by population, which helps us understand how the free application days is reaching, again, some of those underserved populations. So for the Black or African American population, they saw a yield during the apply free days at 23.2%, about 9 percentage points lower than the applications submitted outside of that free application window. For the Hispanic population, we saw a yield during the apply free days of 29.9%. So 29.9% of those applications ended up enrolling. And that was roughly 9 percentage points lower than the applications submitted outside of that free day window. And for the white population, yielded at a 32.3% during the free application days compared to 43% submitted outside of that window, a difference of about 11%. One data point that I just want to mention, it really stood out during the analysis process, was Kansas State University's yield patterns. For each of the populations above, K-State's yield was higher among students who applied during the apply free days window compared to those who applied outside of the free day window. And then for these populations, for Washburn, also reflected that similar pattern across racial groups, except for the other category.
May I ask you a question? This is Regent Amar.
Yeah.
So when we met with regents, I think it was all of us, we met with the students.
I was the same question.
Oh, you
Go
did,
ahead.
okay,
No, go
I'm
ahead.
sorry,
Yeah,
okay,
go
stealing your thunder.
No,
We met with the student body presidents. There was and I'm sorry, I'm gonna misspeak unless you can remember who suggested it, that they have open enrollment maybe in the spring. That might be helpful. So this brings me to the question, do you have any way of knowing if it's excluding the open enrollment, the timing of that, or is it just either it's in or it's out? Because I was just curious if there was a bunch of them wanting to apply in the spring, maybe that might be a good time to do open enrollment second time.
Yeah, can I get back to your question here in just a moment?
Certainly.
Okay, I think some of what might be on the next slide here could assist with that question, but let me get back to that here. So as I mentioned, I conducted a little bit of independent research, just was very curious, much of like the conversations we've been having the last couple years. And a lot of our questions really come back to how it's hard to evaluate some of these questions without asking students and school staff what they're seeing, what they're experiencing. So again, to understand this along with the impact at the high school level, I conducted research on my own that really included representation of the sectors for urban, suburban, and then rural schools across the state. So I interviewed school counseling staff at each respective high school and then surveyed seniors at those schools. And when I asked school counseling staff overseeing the college and career readiness within their school if they thought students applied that had no intentions of applying, again, they are sometimes in the same room during these 3 days with those students, either at a required event or at a come and go event. So it's really just up to the high school staff on if they provide something. At this point, we're in year 3. Most high schools are providing some sort of event at their high school. With even, I just learned last week, we have a high school that is providing adult support for parents, families to come in and get application support within their high school. So for the students who the student survey resulted in about 10% of those student respondents indicating that they had no initial intention of applying to college prior to the Apply Free Days. All of those students also reported submitting at least one application during that 3-day window. For those students who were unsure or not planning to apply, the most frequently cited barrier included not knowing where to start, the cost of application fees, and then 23% affording college. So these findings suggest that while financial barriers do remain, significant information and motivational factors also strongly influence the college application behaviors. One counselor actually cited just describing the student savings and the impact of this campaign to be, that this saved a student $200 to $300 and stated that this could be a car payment. And our families, they are applying, they're utilizing this, our students are utilizing this as a means to save them money. They could choose at one point to either apply to those institutions or, make their car payment. So that's kind of the juggle, that we're seeing that the schools are seeing at high schools as far as student participation. And then when students applied alongside their peers during the Apply Kansas events, like with their counselors and staff available to support them, schools observed a rise in the student confidence level. The shared energy created some momentum, encouraging students who initially didn't see college as an option to go ahead and apply. And after receiving those acceptance letter, it was described students began to shift their mindset, like, I can do this. And this really was a building-wide buzz, as it was described, normalizing applying earlier rather than waiting, and really creating some guardrails, scaffolding the process. That time frame, really, they enjoyed it because it created some consistency, the visibility. We're in year 3. It was a healthy sense of urgency that this 3-day campaign has created. And they're keeping students engaged and accountable. Our parents, families are looking forward to this. So I reflect upon your question, the timing. When I think about, adding some spring dates, while that could be a consideration, I guess I would wonder, would those dates, we do have transfer students, that do apply. And as we can see, multiple age groups are applying during this window. I guess when we had talked with the Student Advisory Committee rep, I would wonder if this would just be for a specific age group, how we would market that, or if there would be 2. And my reservation with that would be, as we're learning here a little bit about how this is experienced at the high school level, it's creating that urgency. It's creating a timeline. Students are following this process of going to college. And this is creating that kind of like a due date where students know, okay, I need to be applied by this date in order to follow the typical college going timeline in order to be ready for the next thing, you know, the FAFSA completion efforts that happen at the high schools and so forth. And then as far as the future recommendations, given the information in today's report, there's a growing interest, along with the Student Advisory Committee has extended support in extending the free application days to a 5-day initiative, just to allow really some of those larger schools to provide more assistance to their students. So there's quite a few students, you know, within our 5 and 6A schools. As you can imagine, some of that scheduling support in time with those students is a little bit limited. So in the future, a recommendation that is planned to come forth would be the extending the initiative to 5 days. And as I mentioned, the Student Advisory Committee, the group that you had met with, is supportive of that. And then also, I just want to note, sustaining the current structures, the scaffolding that occurs around these apply free days has really been helpful. The counseling staff really reported this has taught them. They have learned more about the process. And while, you know, they have applied, you know, previously years ago, potentially, the process has changed. And this allows them to be more informed about that process as far as the Apply Kansas and All-Star High School offerings available through the Kansas Board of Regents. And with that, I will stand for questions.
Thank you so much. Do we have any questions for Ms. Knox? Bridget Amor?
What was the percentage, and I'm sorry, I don't have that in front of me, to go back to, what was the percentage of the ones that would just send one application and it was outside those 3 days? Wasn't that 89% or something like that?
So
You know,
there,
we-
for one application submission, the number of students who submitted one application was 89.6% in comparison to the submission, the students that submitted one application during the apply free days, that was at 75.8%.
Okay, sorry. I knew
Yep.
there was some, that's why I just was curious if, I know we want them to have some urgency. I just was wondering, and I don't know, maybe it's a cost thing too, and just in, you know, workforce, but to have it another time, because, you know, some of those students may not, things may change. And so they may want to, maybe it's not in the spring, maybe it's in February. I don't know. I was just thinking, would there be an opportunity to, maybe not in 2026, but look at maybe doing a second one? If that would pick up the 80-some percentage that are not within those 3 days or 5 days. Maybe start with the 5 days, see how that goes. And if we still have a high percentage after that that are doing it outside of the 3 days, then maybe we could look at a second time.
Yeah, thank you.
Does that sound reasonable, or I'm just kind of throwing that out there?
Any other questions?
This is Barb Bicklemar. Could I respond to that question?
Yes.
I think two things to consider as you move forward on that. One is that if you look at that table, those percentages that are being shared, I missed you, what was it, the 79 versus the whatever percentages, are really actually a total pool of percentages. And what that's telling you is not that there are fewer students applying to college, but of that pool of students, only 79% or whatever the number was are applying to one, and many, many more students are applying to multiple institutions in that time period, if that makes sense. And that, just to give a little background from the previous conversations the last several years, one of the challenges for universities in this regard, yes, thank you for pulling that up. One of the challenges to universities in that regard is it is a good thing I gather that students are applying to multiple universities during apply free days, but there is a burden to the institutions in terms of the time frame that they have to process those. And so you're kind of balancing how many applications, and that was one of the things that the provost had asked for last year. Can we understand how many people are applying to all 6 institutions and whether they're going to college or not to any of those institutions? Because there's, and some of my peers at other institutions could speak to this more, because there was depending on the size of your application function, your ability to process a vast majority of your applications in a 3-day window and get back to students is challenged. So you got to hire temporary folks. You got to do all hands on decks to run those. So that was one thing I wanted to explain the background there. And then the second thing, in terms of the spring, while students can apply anytime, there's a lot of data that demonstrates that students, there's a cycle of the application process, and late and in spring, if you apply then, you're less likely to get an orientation, you're less likely to get your courses when you need them, you're less likely to be able to make the various transitional programming that needs to be done to get you ready to be successful in the fall. And that is the most critical time of getting a student in and helping them retain and complete, because it's not just having students apply, it's not just having them show up, it's that we really are doing our best to set them up to be able to retain from fall to spring in the freshman year, and then from spring to fall from the freshman year to the sophomore year. So some of that timing and programming is best practice and standards around how much time you have to work with students to help them find a residence hall, to help them get in other programs and make sure that they get good advising and orientation. And the later a student applies, the less likely they are to get all that. So just wanted to give that as background. Thank you.
Thank you, Provost Finkelmeyer. Other questions or comments?
I just want to piggyback on that, and thank you, Barb, for that. So I met with the Apply Free Days Committee, and I just want to extend thanks to the institutions. You know, we're in year 3 of our pilot, and all institutions across the board have mentioned they're getting more efficient with that processing. They're getting faster. Their systems are working better now that we have, again, offered that for a few years. So thank you guys for working through that process.
Thank you. I did have a question. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry.
Somebody else.
Yes, I wanted to mention a small pitch for even an abbreviated spring extra day or 2 days. For me, as a first generation student, in October, college was imaginary, but in February, college was something that my peers had started to do. My parents were unprepared to help me apply for college. And October was just really early. No one was really kind of thinking about that. The other thing that happens a lot in early spring are that students kind of have aspirational colleges that they thought that they were going to go to, and then the bill comes and they see that it's not going to shake out the way that they thought it was going to shake out financially. And giving them an extra bonus. I don't have a problem being students' fallback, because I know we provide an excellent education if that aspirational institution doesn't work out. But it could be a nice way to say, no, we really do want you here, to those students for whom maybe their first preference didn't work out.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's a good point. Other comments or?
I would just add in there, the November is typically the priority scholarship deadline for our institutions, mostly across the board. So that was why we positioned this in October, to get them, applied, admitted before the housing and before the scholarship, just to get those students the most of their money that they could get.
Yeah, that would be definitely the ideal, would be earlier than later. I get that.
Regent Johnston,
Yes.
I'd just like to make sure we're aware that the board meeting starts in about 6 minutes.
Yes, so I think we probably should move on. Thank you, VP Mulholland. And thank you for the input in that report. I think it's good. Just moving forward, I would be curious about how the yield compares to the last 2 years, because I do know that some of the institutions have talked about the fact that it does take a lot of resources to get this done, and they were concerned about the cost. I was curious if we could look at some point and see if the yield is going up in terms of those students that applied that actually enrolled from the past 2 pilot years. But I agree with VP Mulholland, we need to move on. And so knowing that, VP Mulholland, you want to talk with us about the policy revisions. Thank you, Misty.
I don't have actually much to share. We had an extensive conversation about these policies just a couple of weeks ago. We put this in as a placeholder in the event there were any comments or any points of clarification the members of BASC wanted to provide leading into the discussion, scheduled discussion with the full board today.
Thank you, Rusty. I think that we're looking forward to a good discussion this afternoon at the board. I want to reiterate how important it was that all of you contributed to this very critical process. So VP Mulholland, his staff, the provost, the faculty senate presidents, and of course their work with the faculty themselves. I think that, you know, the work that we're doing is to try to uphold tenure, make sure that we're doing due diligence and the best process we can that supports, of course, student success. So I want to thank you for all of the work that all of you have done. I don't, so VP Mulholland, I did see one email from a provost concerning some follow-up information about those things that we talked about in regards to tenure, post-tenure, you know, whether we, the defining of what Regent Amar was wanting defined.
Adequate.
And I think we will talk about that this afternoon. And so I didn't know, do we have other, did we get other information or emails concerning any of the discussion?
I did not receive any.
All right, and so I just was curious if there was anything else. I figured there probably wasn't, or you would have forwarded that.
No, I did. We did find a definition of adequate, and we addressed some of those other issues, but I think those revisions haven't been shared yet because we're wanting to see where the discussion with the full board goes today.
Okay, I can say for my part, it looks like we just have pretty much moved forward those revisions that we talked about as is, and then there will be an opportunity, of course, to weigh in the other board members.
I believe, and I don't mean to speak for the board, but depending on the how the conversation goes, that perhaps there can be some additional feedback coming and a possible first reading of the policy in December.
I believe that's the case as well, VP Mulholland. This is a very important topic. We don't want to rush into it. Obviously, we don't want unintended consequences. I will say, though, that this, hopefully this is a living document. Once we start receiving data from the reports and things like that, it probably will give us a better idea in 2 or 3 years where we're really at on this in terms of, is there something else that we need to tweak with the policies?
Yes.
Data is going to be really important as we look at this process and look at it as a dynamic piece of being able to change it if needed at some other date down the road. It's probably going to take 2 or 3 years to get there. So,
Yes.
anything else? I know we are running up against time. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak?
Regent Johnston, I put a comment in the chat. I've had conversations with our senior faculty here at K-State, and they've requested maybe if there could be like a standalone statement on the different types of institutions we have here at K-State and how the work of faculty are differentiated by that difference. Overall, I do realize we have the table there with the different percentages, but they were asking for like a standalone statement. So that's the only thing I would have to add, Regent Johnson.
I appreciate that. So Vice President Mulholland, do you want to bring that forward today to the full board, or we'll just wait for December on that?
I think there will be opportunities for the entire academic community to provide some feedback over the next several weeks.
Okay, that sounds good. So thank you for that, Provost Mendez, and thank you, VP Mulholland. Any other comments quickly? I apologize, I haven't done very well. It's a little bit hard to run this Zoom. We're not seeing anybody raising hands or anything, but if it works, hey. We appreciate all the work that people put into putting these Zooms up, because it'd be more than I could do. All right, if there is nothing else to come before the board, our next meeting, or before our BASC today, the next meeting is December 2nd. Of course, that will be a virtual meeting. We'll probably know more after today's board meeting in terms of what we will be discussing at that meeting. And that leads us to adjournment. So they said we actually need a vote on adjournment, is what they say.
So moved.
Second.
Great.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.